Bali was our last hurrah. And as soon as the gentleman came to pick us up at the airport, he had a beautiful wash rag that smelled like, I don't know, it was delicious because you're hot and sweaty from traveling and stuff. And I just remember putting it on my face and I started crying and I couldn't stop crying. The place felt so familiar to me. It felt so much like Nepal.
Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 103 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the author of The Dream Tree. Please welcome Bridget Atkins. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. Today I speak with the author of The Dream Tree, which is a children's book, and her name is Bridget Atkins. So I got connected with her because Lydia from previous podcasts, had gotten a hold of her to carry her book upstairs in the loft. And so she was like, hey, why don't you interview her for the podcast? So we reached out and got in touch with each other. And when I first got in touch with Bridget, she was very nervous. She was like, I've never done a podcast before, and I don't know how it's going to go. And I was like, oh, you'll be fine. And we sat down to do the podcast, and she was great. Didn't have any nervousness whatsoever. So anyways, had a great conversation with her. She's done a lot of world traveling, and not just travel where, you go and visit and you have a fun time, but was actually living in 3 other countries for at least 2 years. And so you get to hear about that in the background of kind of travel. And we kind of get into a little bit of what that's like for people, why that changes people, what are the things you learn from traveling and stuff like that. And more than just traveling, but actually living with people in other cultures and stuff. So really interesting to hear her background on that. And this will be a 2-part episode. So this episode, we're going to get to a lot more of her background and why she is and who she is the way she is. And next week, we'll come back and we'll talk more about the book itself. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Bridget Atkins. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the author of The Dream Tree. Welcome to the podcast, Bridget Atkins.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Bridget.
A little bit about Bridget. Well, do you want to, know the whole story or
let's get into it.
All right. So, my name is Bridget, and I grew up on the same street my whole entire life. I grew up in Bothell, Washington.
Okay.
And Royal End Road was my street. I lived in a little rambler. My parents bought that way back when Bothell was just a little country. There wasn't really much there. And they moved from Seattle to, from the big city to the country. So that was a big deal for the family. And then when I was 5, I made the biggest move, was across the street.
Okay.
And my parents had purchased the property around the big house, which is the tri-level. So I lived in the Rambler till I was 5, and then moved across the street, had the property. It was about 8 acres.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a little mini farm.
Wow.
And
that's crazy in Bothell. Because,
Bothell.
You can't find that now.
No, you can't. And that road has changed a lot through the years, too. They, have expanded. There's development and stuff that's going on there. But my sister and I had the opportunity to go drive down Royal End Road not too long ago and walk through the house. And, oh, my goodness, that house has so many amazing memories. So great childhood home.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then went to school, and were you in the homeschooled or Bothell
I went
system?
to elementary school, junior high, and high school in the same district, North Shore School District. Graduated from Bothell High School. I didn't go to college. I just really didn't know what I wanted to do in life.
Yeah.
The only thing that I knew that I wanted to do was be a wife and a mom.
Okay.
So I actually met my husband in junior high.
Okay.
And he was the new kid on the block. And, I've gone to school with all these kids all my life. And then this new kid shows up, and he's got these amazing green eyes. And the first time I saw him, I'm like, I'm going to marry that boy. I know it's kind of crazy. So anyway, he didn't know I existed. And then he found out that I liked him. And it's such a junior high little story, isn't it? He asked me to go with him at the mixer just before Christmas, and we went with each other.
Okay.
That's what the term was called back then.
Yeah.
And basically it meant holding hands and making out in the halls. I mean, right? So anyway, we went with each other for about 6 months. I broke up with him. We became best friends. In high school, we went to high school together, dated different people, and then ended up just... Our friendship grew into a relationship, and we started dating the end of our junior year, and this July we'll be celebrating our 34th anniversary.
Oh, very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
So how old were you guys when you got married then?
We were 20.
Okay, nice. That's when we were married. That's the age I was when my wife and I got married.
20, and then we had our oldest daughter when we were 22, and then we have twins that are when we were 24. So
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we're flipped of that, but we started with twins.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And then we had a year and a half later we had our son. So twins are gals. Then a year and a half later we had our son, and then we also have a 5-year-old son as well.
Wow.
So we've got 10, 8, and 5 right now.
That's great.
So
yeah, we had our oldest daughter Megan, and then she was a year. We went to Hawaii, and that was my husband's first teaching job. And then we got pregnant with the twins in Hawaii, and that was like, whoa, a Christmas present to our parents was, guess what? We're pregnant with our second. Yay. And then New Year's, we called them and said, guess what? We're pregnant with twins. So we decided we needed to come back home and just kind of found our home in Bellingham.
Nice. How was that for you guys? Because I know starting with twins is different than getting twins as your second or wherever they end up falling.
Yeah.
Because you get your first kid, you're learning to be a parent, you're getting all that.
You kind of know what to do.
Yeah. How did that go? Like with the first and then transition to 3?
We call it the Insta family.
Just add water.
Yeah, just add water. It's funny because when we came home, I was great with children. Literally, our twins were 8, 10, and 7 too. So they came out as toddlers, and I don't really remember that first year of life. Mm-hmm. You're just in complete survival mode.
Yeah.
Feeding and diaper changing and all of that. Sleep. And then I have this little, 2-year-old running around who's full of energy and life. And you just survive. And I remember going to the doctor's office and crying at my doctor, Dr. Gavreski, and just like in tears going, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And he says, you're surviving and it's going to be okay. I just needed to hear that little, like it's a normal kind of a thing that we don't come with instructions when we have children. And so we just kind of have to go with the flow. You don't sleep, you don't eat.
Yep.
You're just more focused on making sure that their life is taken care of.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a juggle. My signature that you see in my books that I'm signing, it looks like a scribble, and it's true because I had 3 kids in a checkout stand, and that's when we wrote checks back then, and it was just like, whoosh, I gotta go. So that's kind of, you juggle, you survive, and you nurture your relationship to the one that you're married to in the meantime.
Yes, no, for sure. And that I think, I do think that's a really important thing. I think our society seems to somewhat be moving in the direction of making that a little bit more normalized. Mm-hmm. I think we have gone through that time period, my parents and older, where it's like the women are kind of just suffering in silence. Like they're just supposed to deal with it and figure it out and get through it.
Exactly.
And I think there's more support now for moms of just like, no, it's hard. Like it's not just all fun and cute babies and everything. Like there's sleepless nights. You're starved. You can't eat enough because you're nursing, and especially with twins.
Yeah, exactly.
A different ball game.
Yeah, it was great for my twins because I was able to nurse them for a certain amount of time, and then they were on a bottle. And so then my husband was able to bond, and we had more hands, because when you have 3 toddlers running around, or 3 babies or children under 2, we need more hands.
Right.
So yeah, it's a juggle.
Yes, for sure. We were, we went through all of that as well, just figuring all that out. And then we figured we've had 3 kids under 2.
Yes.
We can handle anything. And then we had our 4th, and he was like, we always feel like he was more difficult than the other 3 combined.
My parents say the same thing about me. My mom always said, Bridgie, if you were the first, you would be the last. And I'm like, what does that mean? But yeah, I really took my mom through. I added a lot of gray hairs to her head. Yes. I'll just say that much.
Yeah. All right. Very cool.
Must be something to do with the youngest child thing.
There's some of that. I think there's a little bit of the humbling aspect of, like, God just doesn't want us to get too high on our horses. So we're like, exactly. We got it. And then it's like, no.
No, we're going to give you something else here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, very cool. All right. So then you're going through the, with kids and surviving all of that.
Yeah.
As you kind of come out of that, did you just stay at home as a homemaker throughout their entire childhood?
Yeah, I was a homemaker, loved being home with the kids. I did have other kids come into my house. I did childcare at different times.
Okay.
I dabbled in Tupperware just to get out of the house.
Yep.
I did Mary Kay for 6 years to get out of the house and grow. And then I worked at an office and was the front person at an office when the kids were a little older in school. So then that's kind of where I was. And then my husband and I jumped overseas after the kids graduated.
Okay.
And was in the school system and international schools. And so I was able to do a lot of clerical work and admissions and all that kind of fun stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, it was
great. How did you guys get, first of all, I guess, was that a plan as the kids were kind of coming to an end and you knew they were moving out? Was that something you guys were looking forward, ahead to?
Yeah, we when we went to Kauai, I think that was our first step of getting out of the norm of what we're used to. Mm-hmm. I mean, I grew up on the same street all my life. And then the next move was my husband moved me to Bellingham when we were first married. And so that was huge. That was a huge difference, mm-hmm. Going from Bothell, Washington to Bellingham, Washington. I know it's not very far, but it was far.
Yeah.
So I worked at a pharmaceutical DME office when we first got married, and my husband was going to school getting his teaching certificate, teaching degree, and then we started raising our family and whatnot. And his first job, he got the call to interview for Hawaii. He had sent out a whole bunch of applications everywhere in Washington State. And so this is before cell phones. It's before, our communication was completely different back then.
Yeah.
So, we're scrambling to try to make this interview and have his resume all ready and everything. He basically gets offered the job, and Kauai was his first, job. Since then, we came home, we always had that travel bug in us to go explore the world. We just wanted to explore. And I remember when I would meet people that had traveled to different places like Europe and Southeast Asia and Ireland, and I'm like, wow, that was so incredible. Tell me about it. I want to hear more. Mm-hmm. What did it smell like? What kind of food did you eat? What was the weather like? What was, So I always had questions. And when our kids were growing up, I grew up on the same street all my life. My husband kind of bounced around a little bit because of his dad's job. He would move to different places. And so he had different elementary, middle school that he went to. And so when we came together as in our partnership as parents, we wanted to stay planted, stay rooted. Mm-hmm. And that was really important to both of us. So yes, we had the travel bug. We also wanted to go. And my husband was always looking at opportunities through international schools. We had friends that had gone to different places and loved to hear their stories. And he brought up, this is our twins' senior year, and Meg our oldest daughter, was working and going to school, and Calvin and Katie were graduating, super excited. We're almost to the finish line of graduation. We're almost there, babe. And so the Cayman Islands came up in the international, that there was an opening.
Okay.
And I'm like, Cayman Islands, that sounds really interesting. Tell me a little bit more about it. So he shared more and more information. I'm like, okay, I could probably go for that. And of course, then, that lit the fire of like, okay, we're going to go. And then I went, wait, hold on. We need to slow down. We got to get the kids out of the house. Like, we got to get them graduated. Because I know that once we make this decision to go overseas,
yep,
it's going to be like a vortex, and we're going to get sucked in, and we're going to be, too much time and energy is going to be wrapped around that. So we got them graduated, and honest to goodness, the next November we were interviewing and got our first post in Kathmandu, Nepal.
Okay.
So, yeah, then we jumped to Nepal for 2 years.
Nice.
And then we jumped to Tunis, Tunisia for 2 years, and then Singapore for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was Nepal like for you guys?
Nepal, oh my goodness. Life-changing. It changed us. A friend of mine said, it's kind of like a crowbar to the brain. It's going to just take everything that you ever imagine of what you know and throw it out the window. Because it is a place like no other. And I get really emotional talking about it because the people are so absolutely loving and kind, helpful. We just felt so embraced. And my husband had never traveled overseas. And I did. I had gone to Trinidad and Barbados area when I was a younger child. So leaving the country and, experiencing having a passport and stuff, that was kind of natural to me. And when we stepped foot out of the airport, I'll never forget Marty's face. He was just like, oh my gosh, where are we? What have we done? And I was like, I just kind of went way back to 6th grade, and I knew exactly what to do. It was like, okay, we got to go, we got to do this. And so we switched roles. He's always been, ahead of me, and I feel safe when he's ahead.
Yep.
And this is where we switched roles. And I was like, okay, babe, I got you. Let's go. Here's the van. We need to do this. And anyway, it's, when you step out, it's complete chaos, but it's an organized, interesting chaos that you find to navigate yourself through.
Yeah.
So, and another friend of mine had said too, like your brain, you know the street goes this way and a street goes this way, and there's straight, right, left, everything. No, it's curvy and it's swervy, and your brain is learning how to navigate that way.
Yeah.
In a a different culture. I cried when we were flying into Nepal because I felt like you're going to a land like you've never been to before.
Yeah.
And seeing little teeny tiny houses on the hillsides as you're flying in, I completely lost it. Absolutely lost it, going, wow, can't believe this is happening. So it was good. It was very hard.
Yeah.
And it was very good.
Yeah.
And you have so many senses that you're rediscovering. Something you walk by is just like, oh, what is that? Oh, that smells good. Oh, that does not.
Yeah.
So many colors, so many bells ringing. It made a huge impression on us, and we'll never be the same.
Yeah.
And it was a huge impression for the positive.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then when you were living there, was it, were you guys like in the city area, or were you out, rural?
Yeah, well, we were in, Kathmandu is very densely populated. Mm-hmm. So we were about an 8-minute walk from our school, which was Lincoln School, American school. And we would just walk through the paths from our house. We had beautiful, wonderful, gracious landlords. And we lived in the 2 floors upstairs. They lived in the basement, and they were fantastic, beautiful people. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. We, I've done some travel, mainly Central America, but there was a point where we got to, actually the whole family got to go down, including our youngest. We flew down with our 4 kids down to Antigua, Guatemala. And we got to live there for, I think, 2.5 weeks, living out of a house of one of the guys, a businessman that we were doing work with. So he had a house. He's like, you guys just live out of that. And then,
Nice.
And so we would walk down to Antigua, and it's, I mean, just when you're in different cultures, you see different, obviously you see the differences and stuff like that. One thing I feel like in the kind of Central American, a lot of the culture there, is you do get this, people are still busy, they're hard workers, but they're not in this rush. There's not an extreme hustle of like, I have to do this, like we just would walk downtown to go to the shops and go to get our groceries and stuff, and we would just walk downtown and do that and then come back. And you just see people that are living life, but they're not in this rush to get to the next place. They're walking, and they'll have these conversations with people and relationships, and like relationships and people are more important than getting a job done or whatever, which can be difficult if you're going down for like, because I was working with them, and we would come down like, okay, we got a week, and like all I have to get done for this trip, so like let's line up some things, we get there day 1, and they're like, okay, no, that sounds good, I think, yeah, we'll get started on that. And we're like, no, we were hoping these were ready like now. And so it took half of our trip for them to be like, okay, tomorrow I think this person will reach back out to us, and then we can meet with them the next day. And we're like, oh my word. So like from a business perspective, you're like, we're not getting anywhere. Yeah. But from a cultural standpoint, they're about the relationships and things like that, and time doesn't really matter to them.
Exactly. I completely agree. Relationship is very important, and authentic relationship, and embracing that, I think, was the most joyous part of being there. Yeah. And the simplicity of life. Yeah. You know, and not taking things for granted. That it really strips you of, like I said, everything that you know back here at home is, you don't take that with you. You have to just go, be raw, and be ready to receive whatever is going to be being taught to you. Yeah. And I think that was having our openness, open mind, open heart, was the best thing that we could have done. Because you can come in with an attitude. Yeah. But if you don't have that grace in your heart to be genuine and say, I want to learn from you. Yeah. Then your whole experience is going to be different. Yeah. So I think that, we were humbled all the time when we're trying to learn Nepali, little bit of Nepali, conversational, I guess. And then you have Nepalis who are wanting to speak English with you, and they're saying, it's not very good. It's not very good. And we're going, it's way better than what we're doing with your language, because we're struggling, and you're doing fantastic. So just encouraging them and loving on them, and just learning the culture. And we got to experience a lot of beautiful opportunities with our Nepali friends, and call them family. Nice. Yeah.
Cool. So then, how did the wrap up there go, and moving to Tunisia?
We would have stayed longer in Nepal. Nepal is a very unique place on the planet. It can eat you up. And you can, and you need to go home, because it's like I said, it hits you in all different ways in your senses and mind, heart, and body. And I think that it was the right amount of time for us to be there. Will we go back again someday? I hope so. Yeah. I really do. I would love to go visit our friends and family there, and visit the school. And we've sent people who have gone, friends that have visited. We've been able to connect them with people. my husband interviewed for Tunisia at ACST, American Cooperative School of Tunisia, and was a math teacher there. So we jumped from Nepal, said our goodbyes, which was, it was so hard to say goodbye. It was so emotional. And then we went to Tunisia, and that was a completely different climate, completely different culture. You're on the Mediterranean. Our house had a rooftop that we could look out at the Mediterranean. My parents had planned a trip to come on a cruise ship at one time, and I could see the cruise ships come in, and unfortunately the weather was not cooperating, and so they had to, go on up to Italy.
Okay.
The great thing about that, the school was fantastic. The community of the school was wonderful. It was hard also because our school was attacked during, it was after Benghazi, and so there was a lot of, the spring happened. So there was a lot of different emotions, completely different experience being there. But you find community in your people, and you find safety and shelter with those that will surround you and support you. So we did different, he taught math, and I did a couple of different jobs there. And the one nice thing about living in Tunisia is you're just a hop from Europe.
Yeah.
And so we would be able to take an hour flight to Italy.
Nice.
And be able to explore. So we had a wonderful opportunity of exploring all of different parts of Europe. The other thing about when we jumped overseas, our kids did too. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, our daughter was in Germany, our other daughter was in Switzerland, and our son was in Thailand. So when we had jumped to different places, it was kind of like we were all circling the globe together, and we would find our meeting place in an airport with long hugs and lots of tears, and we didn't take things for granted either. We just wanted to really embrace that time that we had, and then we would go off into our other directions. So we were in Tunis for 2 years. We lived in a little city called Sidi Bou Said, which is right above Carthage or Carthage.
Okay.
So it was, it was a very interesting experience there.
Yeah. Nice. So then, I'm assuming the attacks and stuff kind of is what prompted you to move on again then.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of drew you guys to Singapore?
Singapore was our next jump, and again, he was teaching math with the team, and I worked in the admissions office.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great transitional place for us. Every time you move, no matter where you are, it could be across the street.
Yeah.
There's a transition.
Yeah.
And transition can be hard. When you're living overseas and you have the year coming in and the year coming out, you don't have that. You're either coming or you're going.
Yeah.
And, if we stayed a third year sometime, I feel like we probably could have had a little bit more. You have a year to completely live before you're heading out again. But Singapore, that was a great landing place for us because we come from Nepal, which, shaped and molded us in different ways and opened our mind, heart, and body in different spaces. And then you move to Tunisia and a different environment. And coming to Singapore was a safety zone, I think, for us, where I felt as a woman more liberated to go out and about. It's very, very safe in Singapore. Very safe, very clean. And so I remember jumping on the train one time to go meet some girlfriends for a movie night at one of the parks. And it was quite a little train ride from our house. And I said, "Okay, babe, I'm on my way. I love you." Walked to the train station, jumped on, and here I am. I have to make all these different exchanges. I came home, it must have been after 10 o'clock at night, 11, by myself in the dark. And I walked in the door and I'm like, I did it. I actually did it all by myself. And I never would have felt comfortable doing that in the previous location that we were.
Yeah.
In Nepal, I felt fine doing that because, everybody's kind of looking out for you. But yeah, it was just different. It was a safe place for us to be, a good grounding place. And then we had known that, okay, we're ready to come home.
Yeah.
And my husband's father was pretty ill at that time, and that was our sign that it's time to go.
Yeah.
So we packed our stuff up and headed back north.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. We have, I think it's next year, we have a trip planned. Our friends of ours are going to be missionaries in Papua, not Papua New Guinea, but the other side.
Okay.
But they've got language training, and so we're going to meet them, and that is in Java.
Okay.
And I think we're going to meet them. Theirs is going to wrap up near the end of that, so we're going to meet them in Bali, I think.
Oh,
But
Bali.
we're going to stop in Singapore, and so
Cool.
my wife has been doing all the research of
that's wonderful.
You can have up to a 40-hour layover. So we're going to try and get there, sleep in the little hotel pod, and then spend as much of that 40 hours as we can running around, seeing things, and then jump on the plane and continue on.
That's great. That's great. Wonderful places to visit. Bali was our last, because we had opportunities to jump to different places on the globe while we were overseas. And Bali was our last hurrah.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the gentleman came to pick us up at the airport, he had a beautiful wash rag that smelled like, I don't know, it was delicious. Because you're hot and sweaty from traveling and stuff. And I just remember putting it on my face, and I started crying, and I couldn't stop crying. The place felt so familiar to me. It felt so much like Nepal that as we're driving through the cities and the small roads and the temples and everything around, I literally couldn't stop crying. And my husband just held on to me, held my hand. I'm just like, I don't know where this is coming from. I just can't stop. So it was a really beautiful end to our travels overseas. Not that it's the end, because we're going again, but we just don't know where.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, you're going to have a great time.
Nice.
Great time. And your 40-hour layover, is that in Singapore?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Lots of things to see.
Yeah.
Marina
Our
Bay.
big thing is there's the food area that they have there. It's like a street food vendor
the hawker
area.
stands.
Yes. So we want to go try and make it there because
good food.
Yeah, that looked well. We saw Crazy Rich Asians, and they have that in the movie.
Oh my gosh, that is the most hilarious, funny, awesome movie.
Yeah.
We loved watching that. It was really fun to revisit that. We used to run around the Marina Bay Sands where the Merlion is, and we would stop at Starbucks with our friends and have our little coffee and then go on our way. That was our Sunday running club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to it. Should be.
You'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So then you guys got back to the States.
Yep.
What kind of happened when you guys got back in? I mean, I know that's always a really difficult transition of coming back and getting back in the swing of things because. Again, we're in this rush culture where you don't stop and you're always kind of stressed and you don't know why. So how was that?
I would have to say coming home was the hardest transition for me. My husband had, been a math teacher for, a gajillion years. 20 odd years. And he came back as assistant principal. So he was getting his admin certificate then when we were overseas as well as teaching. And coming home, I really didn't know where to put my feet. I could not find my footing. What helped through the process when we were overseas in preparation is writing. And I think that's where this whole story comes in of writing a children's story, is blogging. And I would just get my thoughts out. And I'm a horrible writer when it comes to writing on paper because my handwriting's messy. I'm always misspelling words. And so that frustrates me. And so I would rather type. And typing, my fingers fly. I can blah, 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 it just comes right out naturally. Yeah. So when I was blogging, we shared our experience of Nepal and overseas, and that was a good process.
Yeah.
And so when we were in Tunisia, I didn't write much because I think that you're in a state of protection. That's where I kind of felt like that's where I was at, is protecting ourselves. And then when we went to Singapore, it was everything is like so big and so fast, and it's just a different way of life.
Yeah.
So coming home, I didn't know how to function.
Yeah.
I know it sounds
Yeah.
kind of funny, but because everything's so familiar, your family's here, your friends are here, and they've been here the whole entire time you've been
Right.
gone.
Yep.
And you have all these experiences that you've had, and you don't know who you can share that with, because there's some people that really want to know what was that like. Like, I was that person when a friend was going overseas to do something.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, tell me more, tell me more. And there's some people where you see the eyes glaze over and they're like, I don't know what you're saying.
Well, I think part of that is the people that have traveled, or, I mean, there's people that have the desire to travel, but I do think it's something that people that do travel, they are more interested because they understand that, like, even for me, like, traveling to Central America, it's completely different than traveling to Asia.
Yes.
But I
very much.
understand that there is a cultural difference. There is a
Yeah.
feeling that you get when you come back to the States, and you have to deal with a lot of stuff. Because
Yeah.
you finally see your culture not as the norm, and that people live perfectly happy lives in different ways, and that all of those are okay.
Yeah.
But you personally have to struggle with all that because you're like, well, I lived like this. I lived with those people. That's how I lived. And now you're trying to retransition into this chaotic, stressful environment that we call America. And I do think there's that transition. It's really difficult.
It's the go, go, go. And, my husband, he hit the ground running, which was great. And then for me, just taking the time to help to process everything. And writing was kind of a good therapy for me, because then I started writing again and writing what it was to transition back to home, my homeland. And who are my people? I think that was like, because life has changed since you were gone. And that was a little bit, I remember my 50th birthday and me having that, and then my husband and kids organized a surprise party, and all these people were surrounding me, and I was super emotional because they're here. They've been here the whole time. It's just trying to navigate what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to explain.
It is. Yeah.
You can't really articulate it very well.
But it's what makes it, I mean, one, even more difficult, frustrating at times.
Yeah.
But no, I've gone through that to small degrees at different points.
And I was able to get a job, and my dear friend Cindy, she has a tax and accounting office up in Blaine, just so you know. I was hired on there as her assistant, and that was really good for me to just like get back into the swing of things, get back to connection, get back to people. And doing what I love, I'm a natural extrovert, right? And so having that, people, yay, people, I can talk. And when people come in that live overseas or had done some traveling, it was a great opportunity to share our stories together. And we all have our stories. So it's just kind of fun to be able to share that. And that kind of helped me get out of that, where am I? kind of place.
Yeah. Well, a big thank you to Bridget Atkins for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast. That's CamanoCommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and come back next week for part 2.